If you want to be straight on, that's that one. We don't have the
We'll show them that.
Try that, Charles.
Tom D'Antonio. Stan Kenton Project.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tell me when you're ready.
Okay.
Tell me when you're ready.
We're ready, I think.
Are we ready?
You ready, Art?
3, 2, 1.
Happy Jazz Festival, everybody. Yeah. My name is Tom D'Antonio with Word and Music News. We're happy to again be the official online media sponsor for the festival, and we are podcasting all of the jazz conversations. This is our third year. The last 2 years of jazz conversations are online, wordandmusicnews.com, and including one from an amazing one from yesterday, Barry Harrison. You got to hear it to believe it. But today we have a special jazz conversation. I'm going to introduce our guest. I will turn you over to, is this KMHD Day in here or what? There's me, there's Art, and there's Shawn Kirkeby.
Thank you very much. Welcome to this jazz conversation. This is part of Portland Jazz Festival's education outreach schedule for jazz conversations and panel discussions. It takes place through from February 14th through the 24th. If you need any information, you should visit pdxjazz.com. There's a link to that at Art's website as well, artabrams.org. It is a pleasure to be here, and we're going to start with the Stan Kenton Project. And I'd just like to lay a little groundwork. This is information that you see in the web pages and the press releases. The Stan Kenton Orchestra was a spawning ground for an abundance of great jazz artists, such as Frank Rosolino, Buddy Childers, Childers, Bud Shank, Maynard Ferguson, and many more. Oh, the name pronunciation is rich, isn't it? Stan opened the door to young arrangers like Bill Holman, Bill Russo, and of course Pete Rugolo, who shaped Stan's early band. Stan was very selective in his choice of vocalists, such as Anita O'Day, June Christie, and Chris Connor. The program tomorrow night will cover many of the musical landmarks that made the Stan Kenton name universal from the late 40s through the 70s, including the Pete Rugolo, June Christie collaborations. Eager Beavers, Stompin' at the Savoy, Send in the Clowns, and some other surprises. Many of the charts were given to my guest here on stage by Mr. Rugolo, and Art has said it will be an honor to perform the actual charts with all the notations written in for the individual musicians that were in Stan's band at the time. My guest, as many of you know, has been a rock star for a rock at KMHD for about 3 decades in the Sunday morning position, in fact, with his program, The Jazz
I'm only 29 years of age.
Yeah. It's funny how that cycles like that, doesn't it? Recently, after KMHD moved to OPB, he created and hosts Jukebox Saturday Night, which airs weekly on, of course, Saturdays. He has been tireless in his support of jazz in Portland on KMHD, of course, throughout the community, helping to entertain and educate. Arguably, over the long career he has had, he's done a lot of what Stan did. Spawned great musicians, trained the next generations, opened doors, and invited great vocalists to perform, all of which will be on display tomorrow night. And we will talk about all that. Toward the end of this, we will open up this conversation to your questions. So if you have some, write them down as we go. Please welcome, won't you, Mr. Art Abrams.
Thank you.
I'm actually not checking text or email here. This is just, how I work these days. An MC's worst nightmare is a handful of paper, so we don't do that these days. Let's talk about the spawning ground of the Stan Kenton Orchestra. Just take it point by point. Give me your impressions. Frank Rosolino.
Well, Crazy Frank, who committed suicide, as you know if you read the books, which is true. But one of the great trombonists of all time, only closely akin to Carl Fontana in style. But a great trombonist, and much legacy with the Stan Kenton Orchestra and his own group after that Stan's band. Besides the instrumentalists, Stan opened up the door to arrangers that would not have been heard ever. Some would have made it down the line, like Bob Gredinger, if you're familiar with the City of Glass, with most people do not like to listen to. It's creative material that is based on dissonance in 4 parts. And Stan did it live 3 times in public, which failed everywhere. But he had an affinity for young, creative, experimental arrangers. And Bob, his material has never been heard if it wasn't for Stan Kenton. You can look up in, I think, the internet or some of the books, Bob Gressinger, who died at a very young age also. Hank Levy, who did some of the modern things with Stan. Pete Rugolo, who was more akin. Pete was probably the Billy Strayhorn of Stan Kenton, like Billy was to Duke Ellington. Stanley and he had a great feeling for the same kind of material, so he kind of shaped the early band, 40, 45, 46, 47. And the arrangement, besides the great musicians he opened doors to, Bud Shank was with the early band, Stan Getz was with the early band, and all the trombones that made the band sound. The arrangers were all part of it.
Talk about Pete Rugolo and his arrangements. We'll just jump around in his arrangements. Talk about those. I heard you talking today. If you were listening to KMHD at all today, he was working with Lynn Derrick here this afternoon on Bright Moments. You were talking about the charts that Pete. How did you meet Pete? He was an immigrant.
Well,
in this country.
He came up to the swing machine around 1990. I'm not sure the date, 1991, 92, 93. Only because he knew Robert Hicks, a wonderful vocalist,
Yeah.
Portland-based vocalist who may be in town now. Usually spends time in LA or Tokyo. And he knew Pete. He knew Bob and I had our affinity for Stan, growing him up, and we did only Pete Rugolo's music, not Stan's music. The music Pete wrote for Stan's band and collaborated with him. And it was a great evening. And we had Becky Kilgore on that one too, and she did the Judy Christie parts. And he was just a very, at that time, if you remember the Laughing, I think, was the Laughing that he on television with the little old man that walked and the lady with the purse. He walked that slow. He was pretty much up in age. I'm not sure what it was at that time. Very gracious, and he directly conducted our band in all his material. And he had perfect ear pitch. During rehearsal, one of the trumpet players was playing something that was not in tune. It was written the way the trumpet players were playing it, but it was written wrong. So Pete caught it immediately, slowly walked over to the gentleman, our trumpet player, and it was corrected. But he had perfect pitch up to his age. I'm not sure what his age was at the time. 82. A very quiet man. And actually, we had trouble getting his charts because when he wrote for Stan Kenton, he wrote everything down and gave it to Stan. He got kind of paid for it, and he never had copies. He never thought anybody would want to hear his music generations later. So when we came up to direct us, he had we could not get the music from North Texas State, where all the charts was donated to. And Robert tried, couldn't get him. I called, Neil Slater, couldn't get him. Only when Pete called, told him who he was, he was able to release him. When the concert was over, he graciously gave them all to me. So I wanted, we'll be playing those charts, which are all written for Jim Christie, which Rebecca Kilgore will be singing.
And Pete came to this country, I think it was about 1920 when he got here. But what?
From Italy.
Yeah. What was the reason? What was the impetus for these great arrangers and musicians into the Stan Kenton band? It came out of a tradition of music in the 40s, but all these people seem to be pretty kind of itching to do something else. And talk about Stan Kenton and his orchestra and the edginess that exists in that music.
First of all, Stan Kenton was a gambler, only on himself. He gambled everything. He lost a lot, gained stature with musicians, but Stan had there was no easy time for Stan. I think, had he been alive, he died at I think around 67. He was pretty young, a long way past that. And I think he lived to see his music become part of the school system because the college bands were playing his material, where the mass audience didn't like it. He had the worst reviews of any band leader ever, and the sad part of it, they were all by critics who were well known. Barry Ulanoff from Metronome, George Fraser from Metronome, and Dave Dexter, I think, wrote for Downbeat magazine. And I brought some quotes because I want to quote it right. This is what was said about Stan. They evidently did not listen to the body of his work. And right here.
Pete Rugolo, by the way, he did music in Hollywood much, in addition, over the later years, he did music to things like Leave It to Beaver, Thriller, The Fugitive, Run for Your Life, Felony Squad, The Challengers, The Bold Ones. Those are all things you remember, but he did a lot of work in Hollywood. Yeah.
Let me take care of a few things that have been wrong. In a lot of magazines, it shows Stan Kenton as being born February 19th, 1912. Incorrect. Wichita, Kansas Bureau of Records shows Stan being born on December the 15th, 1911. And I think the newer biography of Stan will show that. Let me read some of the critique that I don't know if I could have handled. From George Fraser of Metronome, who totally hated Stan, made no bones about it. And I quote, called Stan Kenton band neither fish nor fowl, but pretty foul. Plays too loud, has no exciting solos. This is quote, you can get those, I think there was a 1950 or 49 review of the Metronome. Intonation is deficient, it lacks light and shade, and it never relaxes. By all rights, it should be ready for the trash can. That's pretty brutal. This one, it actually made Stan kind of happy. Let me start. The biggest criticism was the band didn't swing. This still, even when Eager Beaver became one of the biggest sellers for Capitol Records and Tampico. And for Dave Dexter, critic for Downbeat magazine, the Stan Kenton band does not swing as freely as Jimmy Lunsford and Count Basie. Well, Stan didn't mind this because he always wanted to be different. So the fact that he was different than those bands made him happy. That didn't bother him at all. But another, Barry Ulanoff, a major writer for Downbeat, had compared the Kenton sound to, and I quote, a movie man grunting under the weight of the grand piano. So these are the kind of things. And I talked to Dick Shear, who was my close friend, lead trombone for the last 14 years of the band. While Stan was with it, he left a little bit before Stan died. He took over the band. He was like a father to Dick Shear. Said that he was hurt by the, you look at not intimidated, but he didn't show it on gigs. He was intimidated by the reviews, and he felt very bad. He never talked back about bad things about the critics at all. He just said, they just don't seem to understand what I'm trying to do. And, but he was hurt, always hurt by his criticisms.
What was Stan's upbringing? Where did he come from? Why was he so edgy?
Well,
what was his attitude?
His real, actually, the name Stanley was the name that was used all the time. And it didn't change. I'll get into why he became Stan Kenton by everybody. He took classical lessons on piano. He was really into jazz and pop music with a lot of the bands. And his first job, good job, that paid well, was in Hollywood, California, in a place called Earl Carroll's Theater. Anybody from California will know that's no longer there. Great dinner and dining place. In fact, when I was going to Hollywood High School, we had our prom there, which is a big thing. Louis Prima and Keating was playing there. That was for our prom. He wanted to leave a band so badly that he was unhappy being soloist in a house. He was a house pianist there. So he gave notice, and the owner said, well, I think you're making a bad move. You don't want to leave a band. And this was in 1940. 1940, when he left Earl Carroll's, went on the road, put his band together. So the owner of Earl Carroll said that I'll get a temporary pianist, and in a year, if you haven't made it, come on back, and the job will be open for you. It's pretty good. He was like above scale at the time. I have no idea what it was, but he was very plush and very secure. But he had that vision. He wanted his band. It took a year and a half, and he wound up opening across the street from Earl Carroll's with his big band at the Hollywood Palladium, which was the newest thing in Hollywood. Going to Great Palladium, which had all the new sound system. So he made it there. And on the marquee, they put Stan Kenton instead of Stanley Kenton. And from then on, it was Stan Kenton.
He liked it.
He liked it.
Yeah. What gave him his inspiration for composing? Where did that come from?
I'm studying, and I can't think of Professor something Violet, I'm not sure. I'll show you. I was on the West Coast jazz and studied with this gentleman who had classical beginnings and taught them classical type sound. So when Stan came out with concerto for concerto and all concertos, which we will be playing tomorrow night, and collaboration with the classical sounds, it wasn't a surprise to us that knew his background because it was in there.
Talk about Bill Holman a little bit. He is an arranger that is trained by Lenny Tristano, and he's actually credited for the brass arrangements on the Fifth Dimension's The Age of Aquarius.
That's right.
But he's
after Kim.
Yeah, right. He brings a lot of very creative classical kind of energy to that.
Well, he does, and Stan and him hit heads all the time. But Bill Holman was a swing style writer. He wasn't into concertized music, because he did later stuff. If you hear now, he's into some of that new kind of music. But Stan wanted concertized music. Stan wanted to be absolutely. Stan was obsessed. His obsession was being different than any other band, and he revered Charlie Barnett, he revered Duke Ellington, all the big bands, but he wanted to be different. And so sometimes obsessed so much for it that he experimented just in the case of being different. Bill Holman had knocked heads because he wasn't happy with Bill Holman's charts at the beginning. He didn't want swinging material, but eventually he got into it like Stumping at Savoy, which we'll be doing tomorrow night also. And he never did quite meet Stan's subjective idea about concertized, but they worked together beautifully. And because of Bill Holman, they had some swing things.
Did he play saxophone in the band? Is that what he did?
Yeah.
So he played and composed.
And composed, right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little story talking about swing. This is a true story. Buddy Shoulders, who I knew, told me that Stan, and we all knew Stan traveled by car with a partner sometimes. Sometimes with his wife, sometimes by himself. And once in a while he would go with the bus on one night. So one time when it was close to just about the Innovations Orchestra that he had, when they go on the road, they're not arranging anymore. They go for 2 or 3 months on the road. They were playing the same music night after night after night after night. And Stan said, guys, this is a true story. I won't say any end, but this is true. He said, we've got to find some new music. I've got to find some new kind of music to play. And Al Porcino, who was his lead trumpeter, one of the great trumpet players in jazz, came from the swing era thing. He was playing Stan's music. He didn't like it, but he was playing with it. So from the back of the bus, he said, if you're looking for new music, Stan, why don't you play swing? And everybody in the bus fell apart. They kept talking, and Stan, there was no answer. And Buddy said, he never did give an answer on that. But it's not that Stan didn't like swing music, he just wanted to be different. If other bands were playing swing, he wanted something else. And his music lives on today. And I'll tell you another story quick about the City of Glass, which is not liked by even Stan's fans. It was a trade-off. To get Kaplan did not want to record it. Bob Gretsch's piece. Stan wanted his stuff to be heard, his Stan stuff to be heard. And the trade-off, as the story goes, and that we don't know if it's true or not, the trade-off was Stan doing a recording with Tex Ritter, which was a bomb. Stan didn't want to do it. And it's hard to find a copy of it. I tried to get a copy of it, and I guess it's a collector's item now, but he, back to Tex Ritter, cowboy singer, John Ritter's dad, who did